Welcome everybody. In this video, we are going to get a little bit more into the sketching and modeling capabilities of Fusion 360, and we're going to learn a couple more techniques for making objects that are a little bit more complicated. So like with most of my Fusion 360 projects, you'll see I've got a blank screen here. I'm going to start by creating a sketch, and I'm going to pick a plane, doesn't really matter which one. And so now I got my sketch interface. I can create different objects up here. I've got a couple of options down here that actually I never use. I'm just going to hide those. And so I am going to show you all how to work with dimensions and use some things other than rectangles. So let's say I want to make a shape that is more complicated, like an octagon. An octagon is a regular shape that has 8 sides. And you'll notice up here in my create, I do not have an octagon option. The closest thing I've got is a rectangle, and there's a couple of different ways we can make an octagon, but I'm going to start by just making some lines. So I'm going to hit the L key, and you'll notice my cursor goes to a little place selector. I could also go to create and select line, but it's a lot faster if you learn the keyboard shortcuts for these things. So I'm going to escape out of here, and I'm just going to hit L again. You'll see my cursor change, and I'm going to start it at the center, which doesn't really matter. So I want each individual edge of my octagon to have the same length. So I am gonna, you see I've got my line here, and I am gonna snap it to the axis, and then I'm gonna say that it is 5 millimeters long. Now, I need to make 8 more of these because an octagon has 8 sides. And the angle between the sides of an octagon is going to be 135 degrees, which is 90 degrees plus 45. That's something you can look up. You don't have to just know that off the top of your head. So you'll notice what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the L key again, and then I am going to get to where I've got the point on the end of my first line selected, and I've got a couple of options here. So I'm going to put it at 5 millimeters. And I'm going to say it's 135 degrees. Let's try 45. Okay, 45 degrees. And you'll notice it's referencing here, the degrees are referencing the axis. That's actually not what we want to do. So I'm going to say it's 5 millimeters. That little lock means that it's dimensioned. It means that that is set. And I'm just going to put it somewhere off in space. So once it gives me the option to make another line here, I don't want to do that. I'm going to hit escape. And so I've got 2 lines that are dimensioned, but the angle relative to each other is not yet clearly defined. First thing I'm going to do is just drag these little dimensions off to the side. I don't want them getting in my way. And you can drag all these little dimension markers around. And so now I'm going to specify a dimension in my sketch. And the way I specify a dimension in my sketch is by hitting the D key. And you'll notice I get this little icon near my cursor that's an arrow between two lines, and it says select sketch objects to dimension. So I'm going to select my first line and select my second line. And you'll notice now it lets me choose the relative angle between the 2 lines. I do not want it to be 127.25619, etc. degrees. I want it to be 135. I'm going to type that in. I'm going to hit enter, and then I get a sort of nice little... I get a more well-defined relationship between these 2 things. So I'm done dimensioning. I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to type L again, and I am going to make another line off of this. So it's going to be 5 millimeters again. This one is automatically snapped to 90 degrees. That's perfectly fine. I can keep it there. And I'm just going to keep on doing this. I'm going to hit L to do a line. I'm going to dimension it at 5 millimeters. I'm going to drag all these out because I want to be able to see the inside of my shape. And then the last thing I'm going to do is hit D, select the 2 lines I want to set the angle between, and do again 135. So I'm going to do this a couple more times. This one will just snap to the correct angle measurement. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to say 5. I'm going to see if I can get... Yeah, so if I put in 135 there, it's going to do it correctly because it's not operating off of the axis now, it's operating off of the other line. One more line here, 5 millimeters. One more line here, 5 millimeters, and it closes. And so you'll notice when I close it, it shades it blue because now this is a candidate for extrusion. And you'll notice I've still got the line tool selected. I'm going to hit escape to unselect that. I'm going to drag all these dimensions outside. And you could, if you wanted to, I could put all these angle dimensions inside. let's see, and you'll notice it's only got these little angle dimensions where I actually selected the dimensions. These other ones are undimensioned, so if I added additional constraints, it might mess this up later. I'm not going to do that, but I can go ahead and, oh, it looks like, okay. So this one is actually dimensioned. These little horizontal and parallels are dimensioning them. So if I try and add an additional dimension here, it's going to tell me my sketch is over constrained, which I don't want to do. And that's because this is already, the fact that this is necessarily vertical means that I can't add an additional dimension relationship here. If you don't 100% understand that at this point, that's not really a problem. Just know that this sketch has all of these angles sort of included in as necessary dimensions. And there's two different ways to do that. One is to enter the dimension when you're making the line. One is to make the line first and use the D key to set an additional dimension. So if I hit Finish Sketch, I get this nice little octagon, and all of the sides of the octagon are exactly the same length. I can double check that, by the way, by hitting the I key once I'm out of the sketch interface, which gives me the measure tool or the inspection tool. And so I can select my line, and it'll tell me it's 5 millimeters. I can select any one of these lines, and I know this because I dimensioned them myself, but I can select any one of these lines and it'll be 5 millimeters. You can also select multiple objects. So I'm going to select the top and the bottom line, and it's going to tell me both the length of the individual lines and the distance between them, which is 12.071 millimeters. And that is going to be probably, we could calculate out why that's 12.07 millimeters by making a right triangle here, because it's 5, and this right triangle here has a hypotenuse of 5, so we can figure out what these sides are. We don't need to do that. What is important to us is that all of our individual, and you'll notice if I select 2 adjacent lines, it tells me the angle. All of our little individual sides are the right length. So if you remember to extrude this out into 3 dimensions, I can pick extrude. I can also, the way I usually do this, if you hit the Q key, it is going to give you the press pull tool, and press pull will act like an extrude if you run it on faces. So let's say I want this to extrude 20 millimeters, and then I can hit my little home, and you'll see that I've made a sort of long octagon. So to sort of recap for the first part of this video, in the sketch interface, and I can actually go back and edit my sketch, you have the ability to both set the length and relationship of these sides, and you can use the D key to specify dimensions like angle relationship. So that is it for this video. In the next one, we are going to keep on working with some more advanced Fusion 360 techniques. No skills check for this one. Once we get through a couple of these, you'll be to a place where you can model some more complicated objects, and so we'll have our first challenge then, where we'll be looking at some real-world objects and trying to recreate them in Fusion 360. So if you have any questions about the techniques in this video, raise your hand and let me know. Otherwise, you are good to move on to the next one.